going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Swagcast. Today I have somebody from a team that has delivered, a team that has stepped up and made a serious impact with modding, a dev from the Undisputed Forever team. What the hell's going on, Vet?
What's up, man? Great to be here. And I love the enthusiasm in the intro there. Fantastic.
Hell yeah, you're the second guest to say that. 2 for 2 so far on the intros.
Well, there you go.
So I'm
got a winning formula.
Hell yeah, baby. I am very excited to have you on today because you guys have been making waves ever since October. October is when EA dropped that absolute dumpster fire known as UFC 5. And since then, you guys have been just hopping them. They said, fuck it, we'll drop alter egos. You said, you guys want to drop alter egos? We can do that shit too. And y'all have given us different arenas. Y'all has given us all these different skinned fighters. Man, I'm not the only one excited about it today, right now either. Actually, yesterday, this will come out in about a week from the update, but yesterday you guys had dropped your big February update. And
yeah, that's actually part one of the update. It was so big we didn't have enough time to test it all and get everything in. So next week, which will be just around when this drops, there's going to be another update, part two of that update, and that has fighter call-outs for everyone. So Bruce Buffer announces every fighter, and some other bits and pieces, which I have forgot because I am a very professional person when it comes to this. Keep forgetting shit. But there's some other bits in the update as well. But the main thing I think is fighter calls in that update.
That's crazy. I didn't know there was a second part of the update. That's insane. I've been talking to one of the other devs, and he's been like keeping me in the loop with some of the updates you guys have been making, and it seems fucking incredible. So let's get started. I actually want to first ask you, how big is the dev team?
6 people. It has 6 people. It started as 4, and we expanded a little bit over time. So we've got Randy Parker, we've got King Hido 5, SBLOMX, me, Kenny, and Samarunt. And these guys just do ridiculous work. I mean, it's just, this team is a savage. Like, these guys do things that, like, it's dangerously good. So it's just so cool to be in, like, the atmosphere with these guys, and we're sharing discoveries and just marveling at everyone's work, and it just breeds this great atmosphere of, you see someone discover something and it immediately makes you want to discover something further. Makes you want to keep pushing at that wall. If you're struggling to find a discovery or you're working on something, it pushes you to get at that wall, keep pushing it down. And then everyone also shares theories on what could be the reason, how do we break this wall down? It's all a shared thing. We all contribute together, and it helps just... The rate of progress is so much larger when you've got a team firing on all cylinders, helping each other, just loving each other's work. And it's just fantastic because the rate of progress is so much quicker when you've got a whole team going on it.
Yeah, no, and you guys have been like killing it all the way from marketing to the actual dev process. I think what you guys do on social media, mostly Twitter, X, is insane. You guys are keeping people involved, and I'm a guy for numbers, so I do keep my eye on it. And I remember you guys had followed me when you guys had around 100 followers, and now you guys are well over 1,000, which just shows that the community's into it. I know a lot of guys...
2,500 now, by the way. Sorry to interrupt. Wow. 2,500 followers the last time I checked.
Yeah, that's insane. Almost 2,500. Yeah. And
yeah.
And a lot of big names are playing. Like, Pry has checked you guys out. Marshall even played a couple Undisputed Forever mods, I believe. And so with all of the attention, what do you guys have? Is there anything planned next that's really game breaking, like not just skins or voiceovers, but like I've seen crazy mods in other games. Like, I come from the world of GTA RP. So I know anything's possible, but I also know this is a 10-year-old game, and the mods are a little tougher to do. Can you maybe go behind the mindset of actually like getting together and like figuring out how to do these mods and getting the mods actually delivered?
Well, first off, I want to give a shout out to Samarin, who runs our social media, and he is just killing it on all the platforms. Just insane growth, awesome content, and it's just getting everyone excited about it, which is great. So on to the modding process. Now, this is interesting because this is a game by a company. It was programmed by a company called UFCVet, and they have done a lot of wrestling games, which you may be aware of, and most recently AEW Fight Forever. The thing with UFCVet is every single format in this game is custom. It's completely custom. So in terms of mod tools, we have none. So we are just doing we're down and dirty, basically editing the output code. That's how we work because we have no mod tools. We have a couple of tools from the WWE community because the same team worked on those games. There are some shared elements. So stuff like X-Ray, which is a modding tool that allows you to import models. That will work with Undisputed 3. But in terms of actually editing the game code, we are basically doing it with a flashlight, and that's about it. And we're sort of in there in the down and dirty, checking out all of the pieces of code. And but it's a fun element to that. I mean, it's obviously kind of grindy when you're struggling to find something, and it's like, oh, yeah, we just got to trawl through it, find patterns, and change things until it does what we want. But the reward for it is just unbelievable. There's no better feeling of when you boot up the game with a change and it actually reflects what you were trying to do. And the amount of stuff that we've been able to do with this game is beyond what I ever thought, because we'll obviously touch on the origin of modding later with this. But when I started this back in August 2020, which of course we'll get into that a bit later, I always thought the scope was the maximum potential was fighter textures. I thought that was it. We're gonna have new textures in the game, so we could have visual overhaul. But I thought that was it, dude. The amount of stuff that has changed since the progress is insane. Honestly, yes, there are certain hard limits I think we're gonna run up against. But at this point, I mean, I don't know what the hell's the limit at this point. It changes all the time because these guys are just in the lab all the time smashing these walls down, and it's amazing because there's so much stuff we think, this is hard coded, we're not going to be able to change it, and then we can change it. And it's like it's a puzzle a lot of the time. It's just trial and error a lot of the time. You're looking for patterns in the code that can symbolize, okay, if there's a pattern here, it's being used for multiple things, so let's change these values and see what happens, and then we'll compare between different similar files to see if there's similar data in there, and if there is similar data, we'll change some elements, see what happens. For example, if we're changing fighter records, we find that by looking at the code for a fighter's details. And then we will, because it's not in human readable text, right? So it's when a game is compiled, when the game code is compiled by the developers, the original developers, it goes through a process where it's translated to code that machines can read, which is binary. That removes all the human readable stuff. And what is outputted to us, what we are looking at is the final compiled code through a hex editor, which takes the binary and converts it to hexadecimal values, which I know this might be getting a little complicated, but it basically allows us to read it, but not in a so to speak, human readable form. There's very little pure text, right? So it looks kind of like a bunch of garbled text and stuff, but it is there, but it's a case of it's all obscured until you figure it out. It's kind of like playing Minesweeper. You have to click around until you find patterns and you figure stuff out by changing, experimenting, and hard limits, probably stuff like animation maybe, because that's, again, like everything in this game, extremely custom. I mean, you can't just import an animation from Blender. It's not going to work. At least I don't think it's going to work, but I doubt it's going to work because the UFCVet animation stuff is really custom. They have their own software for it and everything. But that said, certain gameplay elements may be changeable. Stuff like I haven't looked into it, so I can't say, but assuming it's in the game files, I can see a situation where we can change stuff like referee stand-up timers. maybe we can figure out how to get certain files that we've tried to modify that so far we haven't had any success with. If we can get those to work, from what I theorize they might be, they could also impact the gameplay in terms of damage, which would be nice. Stuff like move levels we've been working on, because in the game in UFC Undisputed 3, fighters have different levels of moves for certain moves. So they have like a base set of moves which have no level, but there are certain moves like head kicks and stuff. They all have levels on them. We've been trying to experiment to change those and obviously when we experiment, usually we change stuff to just ridiculous levels because if you change it to a really ridiculous level, you're going to easily spot it. That so far has been a bit of a dead end, so to speak. We've had some success, but doesn't look as straightforward, unfortunately. And that's the case a lot of the time with Yuke's games. You know, it's not so straightforward. It's the way Yuke's work is they, as far as I can tell, they do whatever it takes to get it done. But a lot of the time, it's kind of like they don't make it simple for anyone. Basically, it's a fun mess. Let's put it that way. At points, it's complicated, but I guess there is a method to their madness at the end of the day.
So, what you're explaining to me sounds like I've heard this term used before, spaghetti coding.
Oh my god. Yeah, so I can't actually see the original source code, but it wouldn't surprise me because I have spoken to a developer on Undisputed 3 who worked at THQ, who was the audio director, and he told me that Ukes were mad scientists working without a plan. But they would always get it done every single time. You know, they would be months out from launch, and they think, "No, we're not going to make this." And then because the THQ guys would be thinking, "We're not going to make this." I mean, it's not happening. And then every single time they'd come through and they'd get it done. I think the Ukes guys, they're fantastically talented, but I think they also have certain ways of working that are very unique to them, and aren't the most traditional. But they get stuff done. Let's put it that way. They always seem to pull through when stuff gets tight, you know. For
sure. You had mentioned their newest game, AEW Fight Forever, which I actually didn't know they had anything to do with. But that game is horrible. It's not done. People do not like it, and I was a big fan of the old SmackDown versus Raw games, and obviously all of the old UFC games as well. Now, so something that caught my attention while you were speaking was you guys are actually going into the code and changing code. It's not just making mods and throwing them out there. You guys are actually changing shit around and...
Yeah. So, obviously, as I said, we're looking at, so to speak, translated code. So we're not seeing how it would have been written by the devs, but it's sort of like that code that they've written, when they ship the game, it essentially gets translated into something a machine understands. So we're seeing what the machine sees, and we have to then interpret that and decipher it and figure out what is what, basically. So we start this, in most areas, quite blind, right? So it's a big discovery process for most of the code in the game. Some of the stuff is a little easier to realize because it's kind of an obvious pattern. Some of it is just straight text, and that's mostly just text. But a lot of it is just sort of looking around in the dark, looking for stuff that looks like patterns, and figuring it out as we go. And occasionally there are things from other parts of the game files, like a method they've used in a certain part of the game, which translates to other parts of the game. So if let's say they refer to a certain ID a certain way, a certain file, a certain location, the way they refer to that location may be the same for an unrelated part of the game, but a part of the game which is also referring to a location in the files. Good example would be the way they do the details for fighters, and that includes their weight class, that includes their stats, their height, everything. Now, the height actually, the height specifically is represented in this detail block I'm talking about, that has the weight class, the height. It has the weight class and the height, but the height and weight is not the actual height and weight. It's just what it says on tail of the tape. The actual height and weight, we think, like the height itself, the actual height of the fighter, that is probably hard coded to each slot. What I mean by that is if you take Israel Adesanya and you put him in, like, I don't know, Demetrius Johnson's slot, he's going to turn like 5'3". Even though you could change the tail of the tape to say 6'4". It's not going to actually change his height in game. That's somewhere else. We don't know where yet, but we are going to look for it. But yeah, it's tough. You know, it's a lot of it's a lot of looking around. I'd say tough. It's time consuming, but it's in a way it's enjoyable when you finally see a change happen, and then you figure it out. You figure the pattern out, and yeah, just to come back to what I was saying, because I just remembered, because I was trying to talk my way out of that because I forgot, which would have been kind of embarrassing. Right, so the detail blockable fire, which I just said, had the weight of it. It has the name, the second name. And none of this is in readable text. It's all in stuff that looks garbled, right? But over a lot of experimentation, you figure out what bytes of this code represents the first name, represents the nickname, represents the last name. You figure out what represents the fighter's stats, represents their listed height and weight. So the way they refer to a fighter here, they basically use IDs for each fighter, which makes sense, right? And then the way they do this ID, it's, as an example, something like this, the way they refer to these IDs could be the same way they refer to IDs for another thing in the game. So that's a sort of roundabout way of explaining how some things can be shared. So you kind of learn something from one area of the code which can apply to another part, which can help you even if you don't know how to change certain things. So you can look for sort of markers that you've seen before, basically, in some areas.
Okay, so it just seems like you guys just have there's 6 of you, so 6 absolute workhorses that are all day looking through dictionaries and thesauruses, it seems like, because this code's unreadable. Now,
yeah, this would be the case for this would be the case for basically for most games that you're modding, right? This the way we do it. It's because we are, as I said, you're looking at the translated code. We're not looking at the source code, which is written like, you know, you would see a bunch of text in it. This would be the case for most games you're modding. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. We kind of just trawl through it, try and find patterns, try and change things to get the changes we want. And it is a long process, but again, it is satisfying when we figure it out.
I've always said modders are the hardest workers in the gaming world because they want something, they hear a community, and they go get it done. So speaking of that, you had said that in 2020 when you had said speaking of you, so are you the main founder of UFC Undisputed Forever?
Not the main founder. But I guess you could. I come from the first modding project. I was the second guy, as part of that. The first now it's not connected to Undisputed Forever, but it came from it. So I guess we'll go to the origins now.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's get it.
Back in 2020, I got a message from I think it was somebody who watched my YouTube channel at the time, because I used to upload a lot of Undisputed 3 videos. And he messaged me saying, "Hey, you know, I've been looking at modifying Undisputed 3, and would you like to join my server?" And this was like when he just started out, so I was like, we were the first 2 guys basically, and we established it as UFC Undisputed Forever. And a lot of that initial period was like, okay, we were just exploring the game file, seeing what it had. Then we looked on how can we extract these game files, and luckily there were some tools available out there by other modders that let us extract the game files. And you know, we would look around, we would change some things, and the goal for that project, I think, was to bring it into the modern age, but also have like because it was called UFC Undisputed Legacy, so there was an element of like legend to it in terms of like legend fighters. I think that whole process, we kind of hit a limit, right? Because we hit a limit where we didn't know what to do with 3D models. We couldn't figure out how to get them to work in the game. We couldn't import them properly or anything, our own models or anything. So we kind of hit a limit there. So after about 2 years, our limit had been, okay, we figured out how to do textures, we figured out how to change those, but that was the limit. And eventually we did figure out audio, yeah, that was the limit we hit. And then 2023, the project was shut down by the founder because and you know, rightfully so, he's the owner. He thought, okay, what I wanted for this project hasn't panned out. We haven't got a lot of multiplayer activity, which is what I was hoping for. So they said, you know what, okay, I'm going to shut it down. So some guys who had joined since, who joined near the end of Undisputed Legacy, which is the first modding project. Randy Parker was one of them. King Hido 5, I think, was in there. SBLOMX was in there as well. Randy Parker made no, here's what happened. Undisputed Legacy ended, and we made like a server was made after that by a community member of Undisputed Legacy to preserve the mods. That server was not the most well run, let's put it that way. So Randy Parker, who is the current founder of Undisputed Forever, said, okay, I want to make a new server. Because in this interim server, shall we call it, between Undisputed Legacy and Undisputed Forever, we couldn't post an announcement, so we couldn't post our modding discoveries until we had to ask the guy the admin. Yeah. But he wasn't on often. Like, you'd have to wait sometimes a day, 2 days. So it was a bit of a pain. So we ended up making a new server called UFC Undisputed Forever, and the name won from a poll. Which I like because it's kind of a nice homage to AEW Fight Forever, which is another Ukes game.
Yeah.
So Undisputed Forever is founded in about May 2023, I think. And the rate of progress it just skyrocketed because near the end of Undisputed Legacy, I believe some updated textures were made by King Hido 5, who is obviously does fantastic. I actually cannot praise it enough. His work, SBLOMX's work, Randy Parker's work, Samurai's work, everyone's work in this mod is A++. It is fantastic, and these guys deserve jobs. They do. It's fantastic. So Undisputed Forever is made in May 2023, and what happens there is it kind of just a snowball effect. We figure out certain key milestones that hadn't been cracked for ages, and then the ball keeps rolling, and until this very day, today, like 20 minutes before I come on this call, something else big has been discovered, which I think has just been announced in the server. In terms of, I'll share it now because it's already been shared. So we can now edit the records of a fighter in on the sort of the graphics. We can edit the height, we can edit the weight, and that helps because even though we can't change the physical height yet as of the actual model, we can make the tail of the tape look more accurate because the way we assign fighters right now is based on height and AI. So that in terms of the slots fighters have got right now, they're fairly accurate in terms of their height compared to their real fighter. But the listed weights may have been off to some degree. But now we can change those so the listed weight and height will be correct, and the actual physical height of the fighter is not too far off. And hopefully we can figure out how to change the physical height of a fighter in the future, which would be really cool.
That's awesome because you were just saying like 5 minutes ago that you guys were working really hard to try to figure that out, and that just shows how you guys are kind of all geniuses, because you put a normal code in front of me and I'm throwing up. So that's awesome that you guys have like figured out this much and are starting to really change the overall game itself. One thing that I have noticed a lot of players that main UFC 5 or main UFC 4 try to play Undisputed Forever, and they kind of quickly get bored because they're more used to just going online and just having 50 to 100 online fights a day. But there is a way to use Undisputed Forever and still fight online, isn't there?
It's obviously the actual online service doesn't work, but there is sort of a half and half way you can get there, which is through Parsec, which essentially it is local multiplayer through the internet. So what happens is you can't search for a match, but you can set up a match with somebody. So let's say I go into the server, I'm like, hey guys, anyone want to play? And someone says, yeah, okay, I'd like to play. And one of the two people have to host. And what that means is the host launches the game, and they are essentially streaming their game and computer to the other person. So the guest connects to the host. All they need is a controller, the guest. The guest just needs a controller, and you can click in, and you can play local multiplayer. And it's, depending on how far away you are, if you're fairly close in region-wise, it's pretty good experience. It's definitely has that online feel to it, which is fantastic, because as much as I love the Undisputed 3 AI, and I do think it is really good, fighting real people is just a bit different, you know. It just hits a bit different.
Yeah, it hits a lot different, and especially in the UFC community, which is the main community you guys are selling to. It's the competitive feeling, especially for a lot of the streamers and just the comp players in general.
Yeah.
Like I had seen Naz actually say this about not being able to play online, but I believe he has even tried to figure it out, and everybody's even tried to figure it out or is working on figuring it out, and I'm hoping there, because I saw something about the online play, maybe there's a way to tweak it to get better, or...
Well, it's... In terms of the actual Parsec experience, that is very dependent on
how to be
location and such. I mean, you can play with someone who lives in America, like, but it's probably going to be a little bit like. I'm sorry, because I live in Ireland, right? So if I'm, which is next to England, so if I'm here and I'm connected to someone in America, I can play it, but it's not as smooth as an actual online connection. But it is something, and hopefully over time it will be improved. And the fact that it is a way to play with other people on this game, which obviously has no online service anymore, it's a start at least, and hopefully over time Parsec will get better, and then that can just help overall. But obviously, you know, I think this game is definitely less online focused, and I mean the base game as well. Like, yes, it did have an online service, but you know, it's not necessarily actually, ironically, I'd say it's a better competitive game than UFC 5, and I know some of the online guys are gonna get kind of shocked at that. Don't worry, I'm not. You know, if you guys enjoy UFC 5, that's great. But the breadth of options you have in UFC Undisputed 3, so you can play this game with arcade stamina, realistic stamina and damage. You can play it with equalized stats. You can play it with no flash knockouts. The amount of customization you get for a competitive experience. Oh, and you could, yeah, like I said, equalized stats. The amount of customization you get in this game is it's damn good. Like this game had better competitive options than EA UFC until like UFC 3, and even probably UFC 4 actually. I think so. In many ways, and I know again people are going to get a little upset at this. Maybe again, if you like UFC 4, that's totally fine. I'm not. You know, it's just my belief that I prefer Undisputed 3. I do think Undisputed 3, it's more offline focused, but with Parsec, it does allow for online play, but we're probably not going to have that competitive scene, I don't think, because it's just probably not enough competitive players, and also, again, it's not as reliable, I would say, as an online connection through, like, you know, the EA, like, compared to the EA game. Definitely Undisputed Forever is probably best suited for someone who is happy fighting the AI and playing the offline modes. But, you know, if you want to try online modes, there are ways through, obviously, Parsec. And we will continue to revise our guides for stuff like that to help make it easier to set it up.
Cool. Now, you had mentioned UFC 5 and the demonistic two letters EA. So I had actually just went up and interviewed a EA Game Changer and wrestled him. We don't gotta talk about the match, but the interview went great, and you know, we even talked about you guys and the future of EA UFC, which is unfortunately UFC 6, because they do have a massive contract with the UFC now. Something that I was wondering, now your dev team is relatively small and so is theirs. Now, if they were to come knocking and say maybe your expertise would suit us going into 6, do you think that your dev team would be able to go over and kind of make an impact using the things that you love from Undisputed Forever? Because I know you said you would take Undisputed Forever over most of the EA UFC games.
All of them. And it's no hate towards like the EA. Like, they're not a bad team. They're good developers. And the games are not bad. Well, UFC 1 is terrible, but hey.
No.
You know, if anyone likes other UFC, EA UFC, that's totally fine. Like I don't. It's totally fine. You're free to like what you want. You're free to hate Undisputed 3. You're free to love EA UFC. Totally fine. But personally, yeah.
Oh, my comparisons on them are I have my I have things I enjoy from the EA ones, but Undisputed Forever has the best positions out of any EA UFC they've ever created. Positions that they've never been able to do, and you can see that 5 is at least inspired a little bit by Undisputed Forever with the doctor stoppages we got in the newest game. And I wanted a game closer to the things we had in Undisputed Forever with the, well, not Forever, but UFC Undisputed 3, and with the positions and the way you strike and things like that.
Well, that is what UFC Undisputed Forever, it's based on, it is a mod of Undisputed 3, so we have to give credit to the original team, right? Because this game, Undisputed 3, is so mechanically sound. It is unbelievable. It feels like a fighting game that's been turned into a mixed martial arts game, but there is still a good amount of simulation to it. But I have never played a sports game that controls as well as Undisputed 3. It feels fantastic on the sticks, responsive, doesn't feel clunky, doesn't feel too light either. It feels weighty but not heavy. It feels smooth but not loose. The controls and the feel of this game, in my opinion, are unmatched, and it's a big reason why I enjoyed as much as I do. And what helps also is the realism from the damage and the stamina. This game, and I'm quite confident in this. Besides the exploits, which are not intended, and ironically, the exploits, though they are few, they are catastrophically bad. It is basically, if you play this game on simulation energy, you can't really spam. Like, you actually can't. It's all counterable, and counterable quite easily. This game is phenomenally well balanced, and funnily enough, simulation was actually a late addition to this game, from what I hear. It didn't have too many balance passes, but they got it right. This game, if this game came out today, and the exploits were fixed, I think everyone would love it online, because the exploits were pretty terrible, and they were kind of infested online back in the day. But if you fix those, this game would be an incredible competitive experience, I think.
Well, that's what the entire community wanted leading up to 5.
Yeah.
And when we had initially seen the first gameplay post, we were all pissed because it was it looked like UFC 4, and that's not what we wanted. We wanted Undisputed. And going more forward towards other developers, there is a bot, because you were talking about clunkiness and feeling really good on the sticks. So now, I don't know if you're familiar with another fighting game. It's called Undisputed. It's a boxing game.
Yeah, the boxing game, right? Yeah.
Yes, and they are developed by Steel City. Now, I don't know if you've played that game or if you've seen footage on that game, but that game is a game that's just not finished. It's been in early access for a long time. But that is a game that I would call very clunky and a game that doesn't feel good on the sticks.
Yeah, I have played it, but only through I think I played it through Parsec, actually, with a friend of mine. So there was obviously built-in delay. So I did play the beta. Here's my issue with Undisputed. I think a lot of that game could be improved if strikes. Now, actually, I can't. So I should just specify. My experience is just from the beta. I haven't played it since then, so I don't know if this has changed. But assuming it is the same, where when you throw strikes, you are rooted in place. If that's still the case, then I think something that would help that game flow better is actually much like UFC Undisputed 3, in which lots of strikes, while there is no moving while striking, a lot of strikes move you forward. So there is that feeling of momentum and movement during a strike. A good comparison, actually, is Undisputed 2009, which it actually feels quite similar to me that it does to Undisputed Boxing. A lot of strikes root you in place, except for certain lunging strikes, but they'll root you in place. So it feels very much stop, start, which I got the same feeling from the beta for Undisputed. And again, I haven't played the final game, so I don't know if it's like that now. But if it is the same, then what I just said would be what I would recommend. And also, because there's a nice evolution between Undisputed, the MMA games, because you can tell it's the same. I like how they took risks with every game. 2010 was a big departure in certain areas, and 3 really refined that system. But in 2010 and 3 and Undisputed 3, they added the strikes that move you forward. So even though you can't move while you strike, you get that feeling and almost kind of an illusion of it, because it's still very back and forth, but it's not stop start stop start. It flows nicely, and there's a lot of interplay there between the movement and the strikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I actually didn't know that about Undisputed, how in the first 2 games you couldn't move while striking. I should
specify. So in 2010, I think it's more like Undisputed 3 from memory. I haven't played 2010 in a while. But 2010 is very much a hybrid between 09 and 3, which makes sense. It's the middle game. But yeah. But 3 definitely has that best feeling, in my opinion, where while there is no actual, you can't move and strike, but a lot of strikes move you in many directions, in either forward, backwards, or sometimes side to side. So there is that feeling of movement. So it's a really good system where it's very much animation based, but it's done so in a good way where it doesn't feel like the control is taken away from you, and it all feels natural, in my opinion.
Yeah. So one thing that Undisputed did that, in my opinion, EA did up to 3, but has progressively gotten worse, is all of their games progressively got better over time.
Yeah.
From 1 all the way to 3, they all were, it was just a better installment of the last one. As to where a lot of, I don't believe this, but a lot of people say UFC 3 was the best installment of the EA games, and they have slowly declined since then.
I've got a controversial opinion on this.
Let me hear it.
I don't like UFC 3 all that much, to be honest.
Okay, what was your favorite EA?
Well, I think I've got the favorite and I've got the best. I think, well, actually, I haven't played UFC 5, so my opinion on that I can't really say. I've only played through share play, and there's obviously a bit of built-in delay. Mm-hmm. From what I played on share play, I didn't mind it, but the best year UFC I played, and I mean this in terms of gameplay, realism, and balance, would be UFC 4. But in terms of actual fun, that would be UFC 2, because I loved it. That game was fun. It wasn't realistic, but it was fun. Mm-hmm. The problem I have with UFC 3 is it just feels so clunky, man. It's just full of, and to be fair, these artificial delays, which are in UFC 3, are also in UFC 4. But UFC 4 feels a little bit smoother, and a bit less clunky. But 3, I just can't play that very much. It just feels so clunky to me, and especially compared to Undisputed. If Undisputed 3 didn't exist, I probably would enjoy UFC 3 a lot more, but it does, and that's the problem, because it's so much better than EA UFC 3 in terms of feeling. I actually don't think that's possible to be disputed. Like, obviously, games are subjective. Like, you know, if you like EA UFC 3 more than Undisputed 3, totally, 100%. But I actually think, in terms of pure responsiveness, like, I don't really think you can argue on this, the EA UFC 3 is better than Undisputed 3 on that sense. Because it's just so instant, and that's a big part of what I enjoy about Undisputed 3 is just how instant it is. Like it's you feel like you are a fighter. You don't feel like you're controlling a fighter, which is what I very much enjoy.
Yeah, you anytime you speak of, I love the passion when you speak about Undisputed 3. You can tell you really love that game. Which for a reason, that game's fucking awesome. Personally, I loved UFC 2 as well for the unrealism, and just how it feels. My favorite is 4, just because 4 I feel did things right, whereas 5 I feel like they took a little bit of a backpedal. The last patch is definitely looking forward for the future, but I don't think they should keep this base moving forward. I think they need to ditch the base and kind of restart for 6. I don't know how you would really do that, but it would all start with the budget, which EA doesn't have.
Yeah,
they're just not.
No, their UFC team, it doesn't have a big budget, but I don't think you need a big budget. To be honest, I think the UFC games would be massively improved by tweaks. To some extent. It needs to be systemic overhaul. Mm-hmm. So just to clarify, I don't hate UFC 3, but I just don't enjoy it all that much. It's a good game, but in terms of what I enjoy to play, I don't enjoy it that much. UFC 6, that would be interesting, because I've always thought that they were closest to the best ground game on UFC 1. The problem then with UFC 1, they were so damn close to a ground game like Undisputed 3. And they had the wrong denial system, in my opinion. They had this system where you had to react to the denial. The problem with that is the windows are massive. You could keep people in. You could keep people in positions just so easily. The denial windows were massive. It didn't feel amazing to play. UFC 1's controls on the ground were great. The way the denial system just screwed it, in my opinion. If they had a grapple block at Undisputed 3 where you hold the stick, I just think it would have been so much better and so much more enjoyable. But yeah, UFC 1 was a mess. But I guess they did, to be fair to them, they did build on the games. And that's the one, you have to give them credit for actually improving it. They didn't just throw out UFC 1.1, UFC 1.2 every year. 6, I think, needs... Now, I have heard by a game changer that they don't ever plan to emulate Undisputed 3, and that's fair enough. It's their philosophy. It's the game they want to make. But it doesn't fill me the confidence that they'll have a game that I will enjoy. That's fine. It is what it is. But yeah, I don't see a situation based on that where EA UFC ever eclipses Undisputed 3 for me. The ground game is poor. It's an interesting concept, but it wasn't executed very well. And it works. Like, it's not like awful, but it doesn't feel as good as Undisputed 3 in my opinion. And I'm not trying to be this contrarian where, oh my god, EA, no, Undisputed 3, bro, forever, everything. But I just did think Undisputed 3 has the best mechanics, has the best feeling. It's the most logical of all the games in my opinion. It makes the most sense. If they're going to do a ground game for 6, I think they need to look at Undisputed 3. They probably won't, but they need to. Or just go back to 1 and change the denial system. Make the denial system like Undisputed 3. Bang. Immediately the best ground game in an EA UFC game's ever had. The clinch needs to be expanded. I would say again, take the UFC 1 system, change the denial system, and speed it up, the clinch. They have the pieces. They just, they have the pieces to make a game I think would be better. Obviously, they may not think that. That's totally fine. But in my opinion, that's how I would make EA UFC better. And also, the submission system is, again, I would say look at Undisputed 3. Although you could look at EA MMA as well, which the choke submissions in that game are very interesting. You had to do it blind. You had to feel, so to speak. You could see the opponent's bar until you were on like a piece of vibration that moved around a circle. You had to move the stick until you were on that vibration, but that vibration would move erratically. So whoever was on that vibration the longest first would win the submission or get out of the submission. It was difficult, and I never got very good at it, but mechanically it's very interesting. And something like that could work, but yeah. If they want something, I guess, that... Because I do think the EMMA system probably... It's not very accessible, I don't think. Because it could just be me, but I struggle with it. But yeah, again, I would have to say the Undisputed 3 submission system, which they tried to emulate in UFC 4, but it wasn't... There was a few key reasons it wasn't as good, in my opinion. But if you want a good submission system, look for Undisputed 3, in my opinion. Or I don't dislike the system they have in 5, but I really don't like the fact you can't get someone out of there right away unless they have no stamina. I think they should that could be adjusted. It's obviously a balance. You don't want to make it too OP.
It all depends on the fighter too, because if you have if you have Charles Oliveira out there, you can get somebody out in 1. I had gotten somebody out in 1 with BJ yesterday. BJ Penn, but it has to be a rear naked choke. You can't get him out in 1 with an armbar, which I feel is weird.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that. I think there needs. I think it needs to be where the potential is there. They need to Okay, I would say you increase the window to which the ability to get one shot sub, so to speak, is there. I know it's a balance, but I think you can hit that balance where it feels organic, where you can get a sub in 1. But it doesn't feel like you have to always get them down, or there has to be a big difference in skill in order to get it. I feel like it just removes some tension most of the time.
Yeah.
That first sub.
Yeah, I didn't hate the subsystem at first until I had it explained to me, and I saw a couple exploits firsthand from it. It's not that wonderful, but it has its benefits.
Yeah, like it's a cool idea. I like the idea, and I don't think it's a terrible system. I just think there are better ways to go about it. That's my whole thing with EA. Like, again, they're a good team. They're good developers. Of course, though, you can't make a game like EA Sports UFC, even the first one, without design-wise, that game is a mess. But you know, like especially the recent games, you can't be bad developers and make games like that. You just can't. Now, are they amazing? I don't think so, but they're not bad. But the EA games, in my opinion, they are a lot of the issue comes down to design. It's not like it's the way they implement mechanics, the way they execute things. Some of their concepts are really good, but the way they execute them is just not great, in my opinion. And it has been done better before in some instances.
I really hope they look to transfer to some of the features closer to Undisputed 3. I doubt they will for 6, but maybe
I doubt they will as well.
Maybe they will. In my interview with Romero, we did talk about the possibility later down the road getting animations, getting certain positions, having certain mocap things done. It's just all a matter of it actually getting done. But like you said, they do have a decent dev team over there, and they're actually all very hard workers. The dev team's been going.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm not taking anything away from not saying they're not hard workers. I'm 100% they are.
Yeah, 100%. Like they kill it in the lab. It's just a matter of the higher ups, and that's everybody's problem with EA. You know, when I'm talking about my issues with EA, it's never the small dev teams working on a single game. But, you know, a lot of these devs are also getting pulled for other projects as well. And that's all due to higher ups.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think you need to keep a team dedicated to a game. Everyone on that team needs to live and breathe MMA. Just like the Undisputed team for THQ, that team bled MMA, and you could see it in the games. I say a lot that these EA UFC games, they're not great. I guess what I mean by that, you know, I think there are some objective things. I think there are objective things that could be better. But also I understand that there are big parts of it, which is, it's just not the way I would like an MMA game. And I understand that that's, you know, it doesn't mean the game is bad. It's just the way I prefer the Undisputed way. But as I said, there are design decisions, which I do think are like, okay, you know what, regardless of philosophy, this could be done better. It could feel better. Like, I do not understand why there is not a focus on making this game feel unbelievably responsive, especially an MMA game. There has not been one UFC game which feels super snappy. Like five even through SharePlay feel decent because there's true 60 frames, and even through SharePlay it felt decent, but it just doesn't feel as good as Undisputed 3, and that's one of the things I would love to see, but it probably won't happen. But it would be really nice. That would go away to me enjoying it more as well.
Well,
because I do like things about EA UFC. I think, while mechanically I don't think it's amazing, like the way like you know, the moving and striking, the way they plant their feet isn't the most realistic, but I like the way it looks, like in terms of like, it's really cool to be able to strike while moving in that with that freedom. And you know, it's a pretty good, like mechanically it's not like just trash. Like it works and it's not bad, and it was definitely innovative like at the time, and it still is, I suppose. But I think if they really tighten that up and they worked on the animations to make them feel more grounded and make it feel more like when you're moving forward there's more weight being transferred, that would go away to making it feel more realistic, and also play better as well, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I agree 100% that EA definitely needs to go closer. However, we are definitely nearing the end. I do just want you to
sorry if I've been ragging on EA UFC too much. I hope I haven't taken up too much time.
No, it's been perfect. You know, it's exactly what the people want to hear. You know, you've been telling us, you know, explaining great stories, you know, diving right into the modding process. I love it. This is exactly why I wanted you here, and just let the people know how are they able to play this game.
Okay, so first of all, it is available. The game you have to get yourself. The mods, which are obviously not the game, it is a mod for Undisputed 3, UFC Undisputed 3, and you can find it through our Discord server, which I assume will be linked in the description or somewhere in a comment or whatever. You can find it through our Discord server. We have guides, multiple guides, which will take you through the process. We have video guides, we have FAQs, and you can. It's pretty easy to install, I think. Again, you need the game yourself. The modding process will take you through it. And yeah, you can also play it on RPCS3, which is a PS3 emulator, and you can play it on jailbroken PlayStation 3s. It runs fine. A little bit of slowdown, but it's not. It's definitely not unplayable because if it wasn't playable, I would have tried. You know, with what you know, if it was unplayable on PS3, we would not say you can play it on PS3. So it plays well on PlayStation 3, jailbroken PlayStation 3s, and it plays well on RPCS3. You do need a specific version of RPCS3 though, but we link that in our Discord server. We show all of the settings to use. We try and make it as easy as possible for you to get up and running. And if you have issues, we're always active in the help channels with lots of, you know, we have solutions for common issues at this point. We've found them out over time through community efforts and otherwise. So yes, if you'd like to play Undisputed Forever, you can go to our Discord server. You can go through the various FAQs, which will explain to you how you can play the game, explain to you how you can mod the game, and we also obviously explain the best RPCS3 version, the best settings, and we explain obviously that you can play it on a jailbroken PlayStation 3, and in the future we are coming to Xbox. We are coming to, and this is a pretty special thing, right? We are coming to. Now, I should specify we haven't tested it yet. In theory, it should be coming to multiple Xbox consoles. You will need, so I'll just say, Xbox 360, Xenia, which is an Xbox 360 emulator. Assuming it works okay, we have to test it, but it should in theory. We have to make sure it runs okay. Xbox One through developer mode, which is a paid thing. It's a subscription, I think. You have to pay it. It allows you to run stuff like emulators and such on your console. And again, Xbox One, it might not run so well, but we are going to look at that. Xbox One X, it will be available on, again, if it works. I should specify, the Xbox stuff is very early, and especially on the Xbox One and up, we have to do a lot of testing, make sure it runs well, because if it doesn't run well, we're not going to do it. It's just not, there's no point. But if it runs well, it should be available on Xbox One, Xbox One X, and the Xbox Series consoles through developer mode, which is a paid thing. It's not, money doesn't go to us, but you pay it. You can access it through your console. It's developer mode, allows you to run stuff like emulators and such, but allow you to play Undisputed Forever on your console. And developer mode is totally legal. It's supported by Microsoft, so but it is, again, it's a paid thing. I think it's a subscription model. I think, but yeah, that's how. Eventually, hopefully, we can get it on Xbox consoles as well.
You can't see my face right now, but I am exuviated. I think that word's correct. That's insane. I knew you guys were coming to Xbox because I had seen that you guys had figured it out to get on 360. But that is insane if the tests go right and you can run it through developer mode.
Well, we're lucky that Microsoft, first of all, have a developer mode.
Yes.
And also, we're lucky that, obviously, there are, let's just say, you can run the emulator on these consoles, which is good for us. I would stress that Xbox One, the base model, might not run so well. So that's a little bit of just a bit of caution, but One X might be okay. The Series consoles should run it okay. They should be all right with it because they've got pretty strong CPUs, which is the most important thing with emulation. Also, I should specify, in our server, we have the minimum recommended specs for 1080p 60 FPS gaming. It's important that you get 60 FPS or at least 55 because with Undisputed 3, the game speed is tied to the frame rate. So if you're 30 FPS, it's going to feel half-speeded. It's not going to feel great to play. So we have the listed recommended specs. So hopefully, you know, if your computer meets those specs, then it should run well for you.
That's incredible news. I am going to link everything in the description. Vet, thank you so much for coming, having this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me on.
I learned a lot. You know, you said a lot of big words that I'm not going to remember, but I did learn a lot, and that very useful information. And like you said, you know, baby, Undisputed Forever. That's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see y'all next Wednesday. Peace.